In the history of modern music, very few musicians have completely transformed the possibilities of their instrument. Some become technically impressive, others become commercially successful, but only a handful truly redefine the language of music itself. One of those rare figures is Victor Wooten. For bass players around the world, his name represents something almost mythical: speed, groove, innovation, musicality, rhythm, and creativity existing at a level that seems almost impossible. But Victor Wooten's story is not simply about technique. It is about philosophy, expression, communication, and a lifelong relationship with music that began almost before he could walk. Born on September 11, 1964, in Mountain Home, Idaho, Victor Lamont Wooten grew up inside a deeply musical family where instruments were part of daily life. His older brothers were already performing professionally, and from the very beginning, music became his natural language. Unlike many musicians who discover music later in life, Victor was immersed in it from infancy. His brothers treated him not as a child learning music, but as a musician participating in conversation. And that approach would shape everything that followed. By the age of 2 or 3, Victor was already experimenting with bass guitar. By age 5, he was performing live with his brothers in the family band known as the Wooten Brothers. Most children at that age are still learning basic coordination. Victor Wooten was already learning groove. The Wooten household functioned almost like a private conservatory built around creativity, rhythm, and listening. Victor's older brothers, especially Reggie and Roy Wooten, played major roles in his musical development. Instead of teaching through rigid academic exercises alone, they taught music organically. Victor later explained in interviews that he learned music similarly to how children learn language, through immersion, observation, repetition, and participation. This philosophy became one of the defining concepts of his later educational career. Before Victor could fully understand music theory, he already understood feel. Before he understood scales academically, he understood groove emotionally. Night after night, he performed with his brothers in clubs, concerts, and local venues across the United States. Those experiences gave him something many musicians never fully develop: real-world musical instincts. He learned how audiences react to rhythm, how bands communicate non-verbally, how timing changes emotional impact, and how groove can completely transform a performance. Most importantly, he learned that music was not competition. It was communication. As Victor entered his teenage years, it became increasingly obvious that he possessed extraordinary musical ability. His technical control over the bass was developing at an astonishing speed. But, unlike many virtuosos, Victor's playing never sounded cold or mechanical. Every note carried personality, movement, energy, and emotion. He absorbed influences from funk, jazz, soul, R&B, fusion, classical music, and gospel traditions. Bass legends such as Jaco Pastorius, Larry Graham, Stanley Clarke, and Bootsy Collins helped expand his musical imagination. Yet Victor was never interested in becoming a copy of anyone else. Instead, he began developing techniques that would eventually revolutionize bass playing itself. Among those innovations was his famous double thumb technique, an advanced slap approach inspired partly by guitar-picking mechanics. This technique allowed Victor to play incredibly fast rhythmic patterns while maintaining groove, articulation, and musical clarity. And the bass world had never seen anything like it. Before we continue, subscribe now, like this video, comment, and share. In the late 1980s, Victor Wooten's career entered a completely new chapter when he joined Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. The group, led by banjo virtuoso Bela Fleck, blended jazz fusion, bluegrass, funk, world music, classical influences, and improvisation into something entirely unique. At first glance, the combination sounded unconventional. Banjo, bass, percussion, jazz fusion. But musically, it became revolutionary. Victor's bass, playing quickly, became one of the defining sounds of the band. Inside the Fleck tones, he wasn't simply supporting harmony. He was functioning simultaneously as bassist, soloist, rhythm section, and melodic voice. The musical freedom of the group allowed Victor to push the instrument into completely unexplored territory, and audiences around the world were stunned. By the 1990s, Victor Wooten had become one of the most discussed bass players on Earth. Videos of his performances spread rapidly among musicians. Bass players watched in disbelief as he executed double-thumb patterns, machine gun triplets, two-handed tapping, chordal harmonics, multi-finger plucking, and impossible rhythmic combinations. But what made Victor truly special was this. Despite the complexity, the groove never disappeared. Many technical musicians sacrifice feel for speed. Victor never did. Even his most advanced solos remained deeply musical and rhythmically infectious. His technique served expression, not ego, and that distinction separated him from countless imitators. One of his most famous technical concepts became known as open hammer pluck. This approach allowed him to create rapid melodic passages while maintaining fluidity and groove simultaneously. The technique became studied obsessively by bass players worldwide. As Victor Wooten's reputation expanded globally, something else became equally important: his philosophy of music. In clinics, interviews, books, and workshops, Victor repeatedly emphasized that music should be treated like language rather than mathematics. He argued that children learn language naturally because they are encouraged to communicate before being criticized for mistakes. Music, he believed, should function the same way. This philosophy became central to his educational approach. Victor encouraged musicians to focus less on fear and perfection, and more on listening, interaction, feel, and emotional communication. For many musicians, these ideas were transformative. Because Victor wasn't teaching only technique, he was teaching musical freedom. Beyond the Fleck tones, Victor Wooten developed a highly successful solo career. Albums such as A Show of Hands, Yin Yang, Soul Circus, and Palmistry showcased not only his bass mastery, but also his abilities as a composer, arranger, producer, and multi-instrumentalist. His solo music blended funk, jazz, fusion, soul, spoken word, and experimental textures. Tracks like You Can't Hold No Groove became legendary among bass players for combining technical brilliance with deep rhythmic feel. Victor's compositions often carried philosophical themes about life, creativity, spirituality, and human connection. His work proved that virtuosity and emotional depth could coexist beautifully. Over time, Victor Wooten's extraordinary musicianship earned massive recognition within the music industry. As a member of Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, he won multiple Grammy Awards and became internationally recognized as one of the greatest bassists alive. Music magazines frequently ranked him among the best bass players in history. Readers of Bass Player magazine voted him Bass Player of the Year multiple times, a rare achievement reflecting both technical respect and global influence. But despite his growing fame, Victor remained deeply humble and focused on education, creativity, and musical connection rather than celebrity status. That humility became one of the reasons musicians admired him so deeply. One of Victor Wooten's most important contributions to music education came through the creation of Bass Nature Camp. More than a traditional music workshop, The camp became a transformative educational experience centered around creativity, listening, rhythm, improvisation, and personal growth. Students from around the world traveled to study with Victor and other elite musicians. But the camp wasn't only about scales and exercises. Victor wanted musicians to reconnect with the joy of music itself. He encouraged students to listen deeply, play fearlessly, embrace mistakes, and understand groove as a natural human experience. For many attendees, the experience became life-changing. Victor Wooten eventually expanded his educational philosophy into literature. His book, The Music Lesson, a spiritual search for growth, through music became highly influential among musicians worldwide. Unlike traditional instructional books, it explored music through storytelling, philosophy, and life lessons. Victor discussed concepts such as space, silence, dynamics, emotion, and listening. The book revealed another side of his artistry. He was not merely a bassist. He was a thinker deeply interested in the human meaning of music itself. If there is one concept that defines Victor Wooten's playing above all others, it is groove. Groove is difficult to explain scientifically because it exists partly in rhythm and partly in feeling. Victor understood this intuitively. His bass lines feel alive because they breathe naturally. He manipulates timing subtly, sometimes sitting behind the beat, sometimes pushing ahead, sometimes relaxing completely into the rhythm. These micro-adjustments create emotional movement inside the groove. And that is why his playing feels human rather than robotic. For Victor, groove was never simply about technical accuracy. It was about connection. It is almost impossible to measure Victor Wooten's influence on modern bass guitar. Entire generations of musicians have studied his techniques, concepts, and philosophy. Modern bass communities across YouTube, music schools, social media, clinics, and online education platforms constantly reference his ideas. Many contemporary bassists adopted double thumbing, advanced slap phrasing, multi-technique integration, and melodic solo bass approaches directly inspired by Victor's innovations. But perhaps his greatest influence goes beyond technique. He taught musicians to think differently, to value feel over ego, communication over competition, and music over perfection. Throughout his career, Victor Wooten earned respect not only from bass players, but from musicians across all genres. Artists consistently praised his humility, his musical intelligence, his creativity, and his deep humanity. Even among elite virtuosos, Victor developed a reputation as someone who elevated everyone around him musically. His collaborations extended beyond jazz fusion into orchestral performances, educational events, workshops, and genre-crossing musical experiments. Very few musicians achieve that level of universal respect. Victor Wooten did. Today, Victor Wooten stands as one of the most important bass players in modern music history. Not simply because of speed, not simply because of technique, but because he expanded the emotional and creative possibilities of the instrument itself. He transformed bass playing into something larger, a voice, a philosophy, a language, and an art form capable of limitless expression. From a child performing in family clubs, to Grammy-winning stages, to inspiring millions of musicians worldwide, Victor Wooten built a legacy rooted not only in virtuosity, but in humanity. And decades from now, musicians will still study his grooves, his ideas, and his revolutionary approach to music. Because some artists entertain, some inspire, and a rare few completely change the future of music itself. Victor Wooten is one of them. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video.